I was wandering between the shelves, examining the products with my shopping basket in hand. Suddenly, I felt someone's gaze on my back. A chill ran down my spine. I gripped the basket tightly and quickly glanced around. I couldn't see anything, but I had this feeling, the feeling that someone was watching me. I took a few steps, but the unsettling feeling wouldn't leave me. I quickened my pace. My heart started to beat faster. I kept looking around the shelves, trying to figure out who was watching me. I left my basket and headed for the door, my steps hastening as I exited the store. On my way home, the streets looked normal, but uneasiness gnawed at me. I locked the door behind me and went inside, taking a deep breath. The peaceful silence of the house gave me some comfort. I took off my shoes and went to the living room. I turned on the TV, trying to distract myself, but my mind wouldn't settle. Suddenly, I heard a small, high-pitched ticking sound inside the house. My heart started pounding like it was going to burst. I looked around to find the source of the sound, but I couldn't see anything. I muttered to myself, "It's just my imagination," but that unsettling feeling inside me wouldn't go away. The sound of the TV echoed in the silence, but my mind still wouldn't calm down. The ticking sound came again, this time more clearly. I realized it was coming from the kitchen. I moved toward the kitchen with heavy steps, hearing the loud thumping of my heart with each step. I saw something move on the kitchen counter. My eyes locked on that direction as one of the kitchen cabinets slowly creaked open. My throat went dry, and I found it hard to breathe. I took a few more steps towards the cabinet, my hands sweating. I slowly opened the cabinet door, and it was empty. I laughed at myself. I guess I'm really becoming paranoid. But just then, I heard a whisper behind me. I turned around as if my tongue was tied, and the kitchen was empty. The whisper came again, this time closer. As I took steps backward, the kitchen light suddenly went out. At that moment, an indescribable fear gripped me. I quickly took out my phone and turned on the flashlight, but I couldn't see anything. Forcing myself, I returned to the living room. Seeing that everything was normal gave me a bit of relief. I sat on the couch and took deep breaths. I tried to console myself, saying, "It's just fatigue," but the uneasiness inside me kept making me feel like something was about to happen. Trying to pull myself together, I went to my bedroom. Sleeping might be the best solution. Later in the night, as I struggled to fall asleep, every little sound I heard in the house made me jump. The fear inside me had turned into deep anxiety. It was almost impossible to sleep, but I finally succumbed to the weight of my eyelids. When I woke up, the silence in the house was even more eerie. I gathered myself and stepped out into the morning light. The calmness outside gave me some peace, but the fear and anxiety inside me still wouldn't leave. Throughout the day, the memories of the night haunted my mind. I got ready to go to work. Before leaving the house, I checked behind me one more time. Felt like something was watching me. I had a hard time focusing at work all day. When evening came, I didn't want to go back home, but I had no other choice. When I opened the door, the cold air that rushed in brought back that same uneasiness. This time I was determined. I had to solve this. I went inside and turned on the lights, checking every room carefully. But I found nothing. Everything was in its place, but the feeling inside me kept telling me something wasn't right. When I realized I couldn't bear it any longer, I took out my phone and called my closest friend, James. "Hello, James? I need to talk right now. Can I stay at your place tonight?" He must have noticed the anxiety in my voice because he agreed without hesitation. "Of course, come right over." I quickly packed my things and headed to James's house. When I knocked on the door, he had a worried look on his face. As we sat down inside, I told him what had happened. The seriousness in his eyes showed he was listening carefully. "Maybe you're just tired," he said. "Being this stressed isn't good for anyone." Being at James's house, the sense of security brought me some relief. Staying with James throughout the night eased my fears a bit. In the morning, during breakfast, James made a suggestion. "Why don't you see a psychologist? Maybe they can help." This idea made sense. That day, I immediately scheduled an appointment and saw a psychologist in the afternoon. Dr. Morgan listened attentively to what I had to say. All these experiences are likely the result of fatigue and stress, he said. Taking a break for a while might do you good. Maybe you should go on a vacation. I took Dr. Morgan's advice seriously and started making vacation plans with James right away. Let's go to a seaside town, James suggested. We can relax and clear our heads there. This idea excited me, and a few days later we set off. When we arrived at the seaside town, the tension inside me began to give way to peace. The sound of the sea, the waves crashing on the shore, and the fresh air really did soothe my soul. However, the memories of that night still lingered in the back of my mind. We were spending the evening in the hotel room. James seemed to be feeling even more relaxed with the comfort of the room and the sea air. After a while, our conversations became lighter, and suddenly, James started flirting with me. This vacation is so much more fun with you, he said, giving me a light kiss on the cheek. I laughed and pulled back. James, seriously, now's not the time, I said. James laughed too and raised his hands in the air. All right, I was just joking. James laughed and headed to the bathroom. The silence in the room was only broken by the sound of the waves and James's footsteps. Suddenly, I was startled by a thudding sound coming from the bathroom. I immediately jumped up and ran to the bathroom. James was lying on the floor with a pained expression on his face. What happened? I asked, trying to help him up. I slipped and fell, he said, laughing. I guess I was a bit too relaxed. I helped him up and sat him on the bed. Be more careful, I said, my heart still pounding. This small incident reminded me that something could go wrong again. As the night went on, strange things started happening in the room. First, the lights began flickering on and off by themselves. James tried to calm me down by saying, maybe there's a problem with the electrical wiring. However, it didn't feel like an ordinary electrical issue. The walls were making a ticking sound, as if something was moving behind them. Even James fell silent in the face of this situation. We looked at each other, trying to find a logical explanation for these strange events. Around midnight, the room door suddenly slammed open. We both jumped out of our seats. When we looked into the corridor, there was no one there. We closed and locked the door, but the fear inside me had grown even stronger. James said, it could just be the wind, but I could see the worry in his eyes. We tried to sleep, but it was almost impossible. As I turned in bed, every small sound in the room became more disturbing. In the middle of the night, I felt a cold breath next to my bed. When I opened my eyes, I had the feeling that someone was watching me, but there was no one in the room. We couldn't sleep until morning. Even when my eyes grew heavy, my mind was preoccupied with these strange events. When the morning light filled the room, the unease I saw on James's face confirmed my feelings. This vacation, instead of relaxing us, had started to plunge us into a deeper fear. As the night went on, the tension in the hotel room began to escalate. The lights flickered again, and the sounds from the walls grew more intense. James said, I feel even worse this time. The fear inside me was growing. It felt like something was truly closing in on us. Before going to bed, we checked every corner of the room. We locked the door again, but this time, the door slowly opened by itself and then slammed shut. James said, something's definitely wrong here, and forcefully locked the door again. At midnight, I woke up and noticed that James's bed was empty. There was a feeling of something moving around the room, but James was nowhere to be found. When I opened the bathroom door, I saw James lying motionless on the floor. The look of terror in his eyes told the story of his final moments. My heart was pounding out of my chest. I didn't know what to do, but I had to accept that this was real. I was left alone in the room with James's lifeless body. My hands were trembling, and my heart felt like it was about to stop. As I tried to understand what had happened, the cold air in the room grew even more intense. I could feel that something was still there. The fear that what happened to James could also happen to me made me try to escape the room. However, the door was locked and wouldn't open. It felt like an invisible force was keeping me there. I wandered around the room, but every corner felt more suffocating. Suddenly, I felt a cold breath behind me. When I opened and closed my eyes, I felt a cold hand touch my face. I screamed and pounded on the door, but no sound came out. In the morning, hotel staff forced the door open and found me trembling in a corner. When they saw James's body, they called the police, and I was immediately taken into custody. In the shock of the situation, I tried to understand what had happened. Everyone was giving me strange looks, as if they didn't know what to think. In court, I tried to recount that horrifying night. Under the judge's cold gaze, I relived every detail. I told them how James died, what happened in the room, and the fear I felt. But no one believed me. Everyone tried to explain the events logically. At that moment, I realized that the terrifying night I had experienced was a nightmare no one could understand. The judge said, "You describe all these things, but there's no evidence. There must be an explanation for these events." But deep down, I knew the fear was real. In the courtroom, as I recounted what happened to James, I relived that fear over and over again. As the judge delivered the verdict, the echoes of that night still haunted my mind. The night James died was not over for me, because that dark presence was still with me.